Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wake Up Missoula. I'm your host, Scott Ramp, here to usher you into May 23rd. We have one more show this month until June kicks off. We got a bunch of summer camps for MCAT, so if you're interested in joining our summer camps, these are for geared towards kids age 8 to 14. We still have room on a horror camp, which is 14 and up, just roughly around 14 years of age. And we also have our documentary camp, which will be going to Raptors of the Rocky, and also be going to the Historic Museum at Fort Missoula. So there's a lot of great opportunities in and around MCAT as we go into our summer season of summer camps and more. We'll have plenty of videos and fun for you guys along the way. We're going to jump right into some city council. We got a good chunk of city council as we get past the consent agenda, which passed. We go into increased fees to the tourism business improvement districts as they attempt to double hotel fees from $4 to $4 per night. So here is Mike Nugent reflecting on those increases.
There's any ability to collect revenue that isn't straight from taxpayers, and I think that this is one of the rare instances in state law that allows for this sort of thing to be created specifically to allow our tourism board to collect a fee from tourists staying in hotels that then supports certain functions related to tourism. We had a great committee hearing. I think we talked a lot about things like the airport flight guarantee, which that in and of itself is a great thing. Also, a lot of the events that this board helps attract into town and support through this. Nothing in the history that I'm aware of has shown the Tourism Business Improvement District and that board to be anything but good stewards of this public money, and so I'm happy to be in support of this.
Okay, so this was established as a means to create fee revenue associated with tourism staying in our hotels, and part of the big 18 cities in the state of Montana, where they utilize the Tourism Business Improvement District as a tool to help bolster tourism by also taxing tourists along the way. So hence why the city might be a good excuse for some kind of fee that tourists pay to benefit the city in commerce and generate revenue to increase advertising for Missoula and other communities that take advantage of the hotel/motel tax revenue. Dan Monahan, Tourist Board, talks about those fee increases and how support he is of these increases.
This was something that we did a lot of research on before making this recommendation as a board. We ended up getting unanimous approval on our 7-member board for this increase. The last increase was in 2013, and all of our costs that we use these dollars for have increased, whether that's in grant funding locally, the cost that we're giving these dollars to groups to do their events here, and our just ad purchases, anything else that we decide to use the money for. I think I appreciate the comments too about the committee being good stewards of the money. I think we have an excellent staff and team there that go through the vetting process on how we use these dollars. And I think it was something that we spent a lot of time and energy deciding how we were going to and if we were going to make this move.
Of course, many of the questions that I floated to some of the county commissioners or people in terms of the Tourist Improvement District is to essentially figure out how we could essentially tax tourism during our peak tourism season to help offset a lot of the costs when it comes to the services that are being used within the city of Missoula by tourists, and also the wear and tear on our roads. Of course, if you listen to last week's report, the fees have stayed for this last 13 years, so let them have their $4 a night per room. On our way home, this is the big new project the city of Missoula is using as their next big push to help curb homelessness in our community. Missoula's new guiding document is to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. The strategy was created by the leadership group of 16 community members representing housing and houseless services, behavioral health, medical care, Missoula Coordinated Entry System, property management, faith community, neighborhood councils, and more. And just so you guys know, there's a transformative bill that passed through the state, which is going to grant $300 million in mental health services for communities in and around this the state to help bolster those kind of things, with Missoula getting $1 million a year for the next 4 years to help curb those mental health issues, to basically nip a lot of these issues in the bud, to help prevent homelessness when it comes to how mental health and homelessness kind of go hand in hand. So as we dive into public comment, Sage Bennett, who's been decrying for the continuation of the Johnson Street shelter, reflects on this new approach that the city is taking.
This is really concerning since we're going to be losing 200 beds coming up here in a second. And it feels really frustrating to take away beds from community members and then to provide fines of $50 to those folks, which the state has also just passed legislation that is going to increase those fines to $500 a day for folks, which I don't know what your financial situations are, but I cannot afford $500 a day for simply trying to find a place to sleep. So that's really horrifying to know. And I really hope you do genuinely create a plan that will address this issue within our community. However, it worries me that the coalition that's being planned to be built through this document says, quote, will include membership from decision makers from all sectors with an impact on houselessness and be representative of the houseless population.
All right. And so, to kind of react to what she said about the $500 fees, that was a state law that was passed. The city of Missoula has decried that they will not be implementing the $500 fees to essentially criminalize homelessness. In fact, the fee that they established for the anti-campaigning was $50 per fee with upscale and stuff like that. But she said that the feedback loop of shelterless communities along with those fines by the state is creating more issues than they are solving. She also throws the local business community under the bus for making these issues worse for the homeless folks as they advocated for these anti-campaigning ordinances in the first place. So Mike Nugent, City Council, responds to those comments and talks a little bit more about those fees as well.
And there are plenty of examples where there's something in state statute, but then Missoula as a charter city has our own ordinance and our police department follows our own ordinance. So there is nothing in that bill at the state legislature that passed that requires the city of Missoula to start fining people $500 a day. There's no indication from anybody within the city of Missoula that is something that is occurring. And I think that I would speak for all of us that if that is a ticket that is written, we would want to know about it. I think I've given you a couple examples, but one example is in the state law, there's set rules for speeding, but then there's also Missoula City Ordinance, and police officers generally write under the Missoula City Ordinance, not the state law. And that's just one of many examples. So I think it's important for people to know that that is not something that is going to be happening in Missoula.
All right. And so that was Mike Nugent responding to some of those comments related to homelessness. And for those of you who don't know, the city cannot make laws that can put people in jail. They create ordinances, which is a fine schedule where people pay usually through the municipal court. We'll talk a little bit more about the court system as we go into the budget and finance, where they present on a lot of these topics and many things related to it in regards of funding mechanisms and moving forward. But going back to some of the comments, Daniel Carlino, City Council, retorts some of those claims about just having fines for people who are don't have a place to live. And so this is what he had to say.
Did recently pass a fine of $50 a day for that same situation of people that don't have access to shelter. And then on top of that, passed an ordinance to give people misdemeanor criminal charges, which is just as bad, if not worse. So I think if we're having a change of heart on that issue, that would be very helpful for human rights and for getting people out of homelessness faster. But overall, I think this plan is good. I think it's aspirational, but honestly, it's not going to be possible without government funding. I think we need to push as a council to help fund some of these things and fund the shelters that shelter beds that this plan is calling for. And I'm just right now seeing this head in the wrong direction.
Yep. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on in the city's sake and just trying to figure out things. And in support, Christian Jordan also had more to say on this in the process. It hasn't necessarily sat well with her as these policies are not necessarily going away, but changing.
The city is going to spend approximately $400,000 to address the barriers of the folks at the Johnson Street shelter in accessing housing. But it is incumbent on the person housed to pay their own rent afterward. And I think that that's the problem, is that folks don't have money to pay rent. And that's why we have a really high unhoused population, just like a lot of other municipalities across the country. And so
All right, and so that was Christian Jordan, Ward 6. I mean, of course, majority of the $400,000 is money that they're trying to raise through private public partnerships through the city of Missoula, and try to figure out how to gain those monies. And, you know, just however, it remains the extra work by the police on issuing those citations and the court handling these cases will impact the community. You might have to wait longer to dispute those speeding tickets as a result. So as we dive into some of the committee meetings, this is Budget and Finance, where they're talking about many of these people are presenting their basically their updated annual report of their department and justifying getting money for those services. And Lee Griffin, Financial Services, talks about how basically the budget works in the form of a metaphor.
These are sort of self-balancing accounts, and they're kind of siloed, which is why we use, you know, the bucket analogy. These each exist for a specific purpose and must be used accordingly, and except in rare occasions, they don't mix. So these types of funds, we've got 4 major types: governmental, proprietary, component, and fiduciary. Governmental funds, these are the ones that get funded by taxes as well as some other funding sources, but these are what most people think of as governmental activities. This is public safety, roads, parks, and general government activities.
And so there's so many different opportunities and different buckets that are filled with certain funds to fund certain things. And that's the thing about the government, is that they have a lot more checks and balances in place than where there's some funds that have discretionary funds. But this is, you know, you're supposed to be very transparent and everything line items. And part of their process is working with Eric Holstrom, who is the Chief Administrative Officer, is talking a little bit more about those programs and how to basically help the transparency, not to mention create parameters in their budgeting process to basically say what this is doing and what is it going to do and what they hope this money is going to go towards, rather than just being Arcan, $400,000 is like, what's Arcan? And then you just look into it further, it's like, oh, it's the blah, 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 and everything like that. That's an example. That has no credence on what the city of Missoula is doing. But here is some of the backgrounds on clarity on basically making it a little bit more accessible for the budgeting for the city of Missoula.
We will use again this tool that we rolled out last year, the program inventories, that provide a little bit more context and sort of a broader picture for departmental budgets, or beyond what you see in the line-by-line budget that we normally publish. You know, budgeting is an exercise in weighing priorities, and this is a way that lets you see sort of the connection points between the city's investments and its articulated strategic goals. I'll go through a little bit more.
All right, so, you know, the whole idea is like, you know, they want to explain a little bit further what the money is going towards in general. So they just want to make sure the clarity. So essentially this was made to make it easier for folks to research how the city is using their money to move forward on this. So program inventory, more information on that, and most of the, and you know, while the hearings, you know, they went through quite a lot, the bulk of the information actually goes through the Municipal Court update. So Carrie Dady, Port Administrator for the Municipal Court, has some updates to talk a little bit more about how Municipal Court works.
The inherent authority of courts to do everything we are commissioned to do. There's a lot of latitude in there statutorily. We have all means necessary for the exercise of the jurisdiction given. And further down, you know, there's been a lot of case law. What does that mean? And this Montana Supreme Court has consistently said any suitable process or mode of proceeding that's conformable with this spirit of access to justice, impartiality, fairness, due process, a court may use.
So when you think about it, like what she just said, essentially what the court system is able to do is, imagine, you know, you have your homeless person who gets their $50 fine. They go to this municipal court to dispute it, and then the court system basically says, like, here are some of the services. This is, if you can do this in lieu of paying your fee, we will drop your fee altogether. So they kind of use that ordinance as a tool, as a way to, it's the carrot and stick model all over again. They may not actually fine people, but it's usually the habitual offender that they'll be like, okay, you got to have to pay. We tried so far just to get you where you need to be, but at this point we can't do that. So she mentioned that the layers of the law in Missoula is that this and that, and how it operates through the city as opposed to county courts, which has other levels of law. Municipal courts handle a lot of administrative work within the city and interprets laws to help keep checks and balances with the powers within the city and their elected officials. Carrie also talks about how their small group works specifically.
Municipal Court has a staff of 22 people. So it would not make financial sense for us to have our own IT person, our own HR person, our own payroll person to serve a staff of 22. I would say district courts in the state, the Supreme Court, all of those services go through the court administrator appointed by the Supreme Court. And so they really do have a very effective way of managing the judicial branch administrative options.
And so the point of having these kinds of things is that the judicial system is supposed to be a major through line when it comes to enforcing a lot of the laws that were passed through, city council members there who may have maybe one term within the city of Missoula, but their ordinance and their ruling and their changes have farther impacts and are withheld through the justice system, the municipal courts. So it is something to really kind of think about. As they stress the importance of due process by law for upholding the law. For example, an attorney has the mechanism to appeal to the district court or Montana Supreme Court. As always, think of it as like the post hospital, where they're trying to build residential housing in a non-residential zoned area. A lot of people said no. They appealed further, and the city basically, they hired lawyers, went some back and forth. They said, oh, no, you're not going to be allowed to do it. And then, of course, the appeal process gets kicked up further and further, and then they decide whether or not they want to take up the case or not. And there's like, hey, it looks like they got all their ducks in a row in this previous case. This appeal seems pretty sound and solid, and so they can cut it off and be like, no, you can't do that. So that was just an example, but as the courts handle anything from pretrial assistance, traffic court, shelter court, and drop-ins for folks getting access to the legal system, they also have office hours posted, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Weekdays, in case you want to know. Carrie also talks about the budget shortfalls in response to city council questions, and this is what she had to say.
We don't have any control over the number of citations issued and the number of charges coming into our court. I think it is a collective community conversation. How do we want to spend our limited resources, our limited time and energy? Is it on this? Is investing it on misdemeanor violations getting us the results we want? And if it's not, what kind of root cause analysis can we do to get at some of those deeper, more complex issues for our unhoused people in our community? I think it's a collective conversation between the police, the courts, the prosecutor, the city council on how do we want to address this really complex problem in a way that we are looking at root cause, that we aren't pushing the problem to somebody else's budget, that we aren't enlarging the problem, that we are solving the problem that we set out to solve, and we're not causing new problems along the way. And so,
so that was her response to some of the budget shortfalls and just some of the things that are happening just in general. And these are just the signs of the times in the city of Missoula. Many times the courts use these fines approved by council on illegal camping to curb behaviors, while by offering creative solutions beyond just the fine. Carrie also talks about habitual offenders and what they do when it comes to handling those, people who find themselves going back and back and back to the municipal court system.
I wish we had cracked the code on this issue of reoffense and reoffense. I wish we had an answer and we said, we have addiction services, we have clinical services, we have housing, and that is it. But for all courts, it remains an issue of how do we address reoffending? One approach has been, a really high punitive approach, and it hasn't produced the results. And so,
all right, so that's something to really think about, is that the municipal court might not be getting the right kind of communication with the local government or departments within the city of Missoula in general to help curb these kinds of things, because for the most part, they're just kind of, trash duty. They're cleaning up a lot of the messes that are created and being like, oh, we shouldn't have fined you in the first place, blah, 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 this shouldn't have happened, or this thing, like justice is interpreted and served, and plea deals and things, figuring things out as best as they can, but they're still reactive to the laws that are passed by, the laws or the ordinances that are passed and the way that they interpreted a lot of these kind of things. But by the end of the meeting, they spoke about increasing transparency and that they are looking for adjustments to the budget, which the last of them will be due by July 28th before they can really discuss and work through the final vote on the budget by August. So we're still going to be talking about this back and forth and stuff like that. And so this is just kind of a tease of some of the departments that we're all going through. And while we're talking about some departments, one of the big things that are what happens every year is the police report. This is the annual police report for the entire year of 2024, where they talk about numbers, statistics, and everything about those incidents. And Police Chief Mike Collier talks about those incidents over the last year.
Anecdotally, as the city has grown from 2020, year 2000 to 2024, I've crunched a few numbers on that, a little bit more detail. The total police incidents in that time frame are up about 57%, 58%, and we were up about 47% on staffing on sworn officers in that time period. What we've done to make up that delta and be a little bit more financially responsible is in 2015, we added the community service specialists, the non-sworn employees that can handle lower level offenses, city ordinance type stuff, and not tie up an officer. And we've also added reserve officers in 2021 to take on some statutory obligations related to court security and to relieve officers time interacting with the court so they can get cleared up a little bit sooner.
And so with, all the training and all the stuff they've done, they've had nearly, 40,000 training hours amongst their police staff. Among those police, there are trial periods and positions that the police must manage before they are officially sworn in. These are part of the training and moonlighting they do. You might see them at a concert or maybe just patrolling areas around the courthouse or even in the municipal court themselves. Not necessarily bailiffs, but still acting as more security basis. You might see them kind of wearing the uniform, but with some blue on them as well. So there's just something to kind of think about with them. But then, of course, there's always police officers who actually are considered sworn and police officers who also do security for these events and more, just as a kind of like moonlighting, get some extra cash. So Mike also talks about the majority of crimes that are occurring in the city of Missoula. And if you haven't read in the reports and recently, one of the biggest things that are on the rise are basic traffic incidents.
On that chart there is about 27,600 police incidences. And then they just become smaller and smaller as you go down from there. But that gives you an idea really of a big chunk of what our officers' time is being taken up on. The picture there reflects a serious fentanyl overdose situation. We had 3 people in a car that overdosed at the same time, and it leads me to weigh in a little bit about fentanyl and Narcan, which is in 2023 we had 36 applications on 27 different individuals, and in 2024 that's down just a little bit to 32 applications on 23 individuals. I talked to the state's attorney general a little bit ago about the statewide data related to fentanyl and overdoses in Narcan, and they're recognizing a similar kind of decline a little bit in fentanyl seizures and fentanyl overdoses and in Narcan applications. So we look to be really on track with the state data on that.
All right. So yeah, there's a lot of things that are occurring around town. It said, I'll say it before, and let's see. Hold on one second. I got to double check. Let's see. Oh, yeah, there's still some more information that he's talking about. Sorry, I cut him off.
Crash locations and high-risk locations throughout the city, they're up again. And so crash data is a difficult thing to digest because there's a lot that goes into that. The thing that really jumps out on us is the high-risk locations. 8 of the top 10 crash locations in Missoula are on Reserve Street. The last 2 years, 7 out of the 10 were on Reserve Street. And this year, American Way and Reserve dropped off the list. but we picked up reserve amount, we picked up reserve in river. And so
All right, so when you think about it, the best way to avoid any kind of traffic incidents in the city of Missoula is to avoid Reserve Street. And I'm going to say it on this show just as much as I say it on MCAT Mondays, my radio show that I do every Monday at noon. Just don't go on Reserve Street. If you want to save time on traffic, don't go on Reserve. It's just the way it is. And one of the things is that, there's 41 incidents from 2024. The whole idea is that they don't want to have any kind of major incidents, stuff like that. But of course, as I dive a little bit more into some of the details, in case of drugs, meth numbers were high in 2022 at 23,000 grams seized, while this year saw a drop into about 9,800. Of course, fentanyl is basically the new designer drug that is kind of sweeping the nation, but they saw the peak in 2023 with 31,000 pills seized and decreased by more than half in 2024, totaling about 12,721 pills collected. Mike mentioned that a lot of the cartels and where fentanyl comes from, Mexico, they decided to not produce as much and distribute. They switched to grams in their way that they scaled, and they measured at 2,600 grams of fentanyl collected in 2024 alone. Mike later mentioned that those low numbers are a result of production slowing down from the cartels. Mike also talks about SWAT teams, so what they're doing in terms of SWAT training and some of the things that they and how many times they've had to deploy the SWAT team.
Our special teams, we were down last year from 2022. We pulled back on the number of deployments, and now we have gone back up in 2024. So we're back up to 11 deployments this year. We had 5 criminal barricades. We pursued 1 homicide suspect and assisted some other agencies. So you'll see that they. One of the things I've kind of previewed in the department update a couple months ago is, like digital technology or digital forensics, I should say, the equipment and training and consumables that come on these special teams is also just continuing to skyrocket in price. And so we have capable people, we have good equipment, and we train routinely, but being able to replace the consumables and replace the specialized equipment as it aged out continues to get very expensive.
Yep, so things are getting more and more expensive. I think it was last fall, the city of the police department asked for a new bump in their money to help create a new taser system, because the tasers that they already had were aged out, and it would cost more to have replacement parts and repairs and maintenance within the next 3 or 4 years when they basically discontinue most of the stuff. But the new tasers that they're going to be getting are pretty sweet and has the ability to shoot 10 rounds of electrified rods that essentially can incapacitate people, unlike the old tasers, which is maybe one shot chance, and you have to make sure that both wires hit you. So there's a lot of opportunities for what they're moving forward with, but we're not talking about tasers, we're talking about some of the other things. But Mike also addresses the need for data and how their system has filled 16 terabytes of data just by this year. So this is his response to that.
The first thing that is on my mind after looking at this is I've committed to do a better job of collecting and analyzing data. And so what I mean by this is that, from the beginning of time, police activity has been measured in what we oftentimes call for service. I like to call a police incident. But, and that would measure how busy are you? I don't think that that's the best way to do it, because the calls for service can be a traffic stop. A person gets a warning and they're on their way in 60 seconds, right? It can also be a double homicide. And those are 2 very, very different workloads. And so I'm struggling with, although I will continue to give you the police incident data, is there a more meaningful way to do that? I don't know the answer to that yet. I've asked some people to help me with it, but I hope we can get better data to paint the picture of our workload.
Yeah, just kind of reflect about how much work a lot of the police department do, not to mention being able to defer a lot of their extra work for the mobile crisis unit that a lot of them refer to when people are going through a mental health crisis. And, you know, if the police are not needed, they have the folks in place to kind of help do that kind of stuff. So please walk the line, and whether you're pulled over, they can be your worst nightmare, or getting caught off in traffic and you're not seeing the police doing their dang job. You know, it's notwithstanding that the folks do their jobs, that many people would prefer to be non-confrontational in those situations that demand hard decisions. But as Mike talks about drivers and how fast they are going on Reserve Street, and that kind of alludes to the fact that, you know, don't go on Reserve Street because it is a major highway corridor, and people getting off the highway think they can go more than 45 miles per hour.
He told me that he cited a 68 in a 45 zone and a 71 in a 45 zone. So, I mean, it just tells you that, you know, we've got to get our arms around what's going on up there with speed. I think, you know, some of the big contributing factors are high-end rear impact collisions, probably due to speed and attention, and then left turn and right away violations, probably due to inattention, and also closing speed. I mean, it's a stretch of road there that's got a pretty high speed limit when it's going right adjacent to or through a city, and so I think people oftentimes don't judge closing speed, and that could contribute to that. So we're going to do the best.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, is that Reserve Street is a huge issue that the city of Missoula is spending upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars through the Montana Department of Transportation's money to help fund a study to fix Reserve Street the best way that they can, you know. I've heard the speedsters near where I live off of Reserve, you know, buffered by some of the development, but not enough to hear those cars revving up those engines. It just happens that way. It's a long stretch of road, and people take advantage of that. Mike also talks about having those tools for anti-camping ordinances and kind of reflects on that as well. And so here's Mike Nugent, City Council.
A lot of public comments over the last about a month at council, and some misinformation, I think, around HB 642. And that, my understanding, and I've spoken to the city attorneys about it, is that there's nothing in the bill that requires the city to utilize that as to replace our ordinance or anything of that nature. So I'm just curious if you could just provide some guidance to us on what guidance you're giving to your officers on utilizing that state law or following our city ordinance, that topic there.
Yeah, sure. So if you look through Missoula Municipal Code, there's going to be a number of things in there that overlap with state law. And so we're not mandated to use one or the other. You can cite a municipal court violation or a state violation as needed, or with some strategic approach. For this in particular, this amends the public nuisance statute, and so it goes into effect in October. And my direction to the patrol captain is that I want us to cite the municipal court ordinance, the municipal ordinance, sorry, rather than the state statute. For a couple of simple reasons. Number one, the state statute has a $500 maximum fine, I think. It's not eligible for incarceration anyway. It's not an arrestable offense, but a $500 fine would likely not get imposed, and if it did, it likely wouldn't get paid. So the monetary fine on that doesn't mean much to me. I think we should just continue to use the municipal code as an enforcement tool, if for nothing else other than tracking statistics. If and inevitably you all are going to want to know how many of these citations we're issuing, and if we have to go search the 1260 city ordinance violations and the Title 45 public nuisance violations, it's going to just make it confusing. So I've told.
All right, so that's the interesting thing about a lot of like police, how they interpret the law as best as they can. Imagine you got pulled over. They have the maximum amount that they can ticket you when they pull you over, right? But they can also interpret it in their own way, which gives them the flexibility to be like, okay, I could make you pay $250 for this traffic violation, but I'm going to be a nice guy and charge you $100 on the citation, which gives the police a certain extra amount of authority to a certain degree, which is why they have that kind of like cap. So the city of Missoula could do the $500 cap if they wanted to, but they're going to be following the $50 ordinance, which is what they're going to be able to use. But at the same time, they still have the ability to do that $500 fee if they were to wish to interpret it that way. but the city of Missoula police officers will probably do the $50 fine, but I can't necessarily speak for the county sheriff office, highway patrol, or just basic state agencies that enforce those kind of behaviors and such. So, you got to really kind of interpret it and think about those kind of things as we move forward. The state passed a law allowing for the upwards of $500 for illegal camping, but regardless, the city can use this tool of enforcement as they so choose, and the municipal court can interpret it as best they can to help even curb some of this stuff, so they might not even have to fine people. So it's kind of like how the parking commission, and of course I took out a couple quotes from them because I didn't have too much time to talk about it, but I'm going to use the rest of this time in my city council report to kind of talk about how the parking commission has this rule where a lot of time first-time offenders get one of those envelopes that says, "Oh, I got a bill," and they open it up and look at it. It's like, wait, this is a receipt that says $0.00. Oh, so I don't have to pay for it, and then it just has a little note that says, "You get off this time, but don't park illegally again or pay for your parking." It's those kind of things. But regardless, it's a very interesting kind of thing. But but yeah, that concludes my city council report. But up next, we have a fun video featuring the 12 Missoula, Montana artists you should be listening to. This is Max Laporte performing one of his songs of one of the 12.
I got lost in what you're trying to say, 'cause your eyes melt my mind and I fade away. And I keep on searching for the right words to say, but my mind is a maze and I struggle to say. You make me feel so alive, just by the way that you smile. And I feel like I can't breathe, and I'm exactly where I should be. No, I'll never make you cry, except when I talk with my eyes. So tell me, are you real? Where did you come from? You seem out of place. You're out of this world, you must be from outer space. And I wanna show you how I feel every day, but you make me so nervous that I struggle to say. You make me feel so alive, just by the way that you smile. And I feel like I can't breathe, and I'm exactly where I should be. No, I'll never make you cry, except when I talk with my eyes. So tell me, are you real? I can't believe I get to feel this kind of love. I'm overjoyed, I just can't wait to see what's to come. You make me feel so alive, just by the way that you smile. And I feel like I can't breathe, and I'm exactly where I should be. No, I'll never make you cry, except when I talk with my eyes. So tell me, are you real? 'Cause 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 'cause
Okay, we are back. Let's talk about some movies that are coming out this weekend. It's time for Pre-Critic, where I judge a movie based on my biases towards movies in general. And at this point, Mission Impossible should try and probably change their name. But regardless, it's supposed to be like, it's a really hard mission, but he's probably going to win it. So we're at the final reckoning before the next one, where Tom Cruise tricked NASA into letting him film a movie in space. Watch as the 63-year-old convinces us to watch his movies knowing he almost died making most of those stunts in his gimmicky kind of behind-the-scenes stunt movies where you actually like, okay, but the movie is just like, fine, I guess. But then you watch it and you're just like, oh, so that's what he did with the behind the scenes, and that's the full scene, how it incorporates with the movie. Yeah, interesting. Oh, so he held his breath for a long time. Cool. Okay, and I assume, you know, he goes on a mission, disguises himself to infiltrate the place and the thing. Essentially, this is a movie that's supposed to be him fighting against an AI submarine that has, well, it's an AI nuclear sub, so they have nuclear weapons, and the AI has such a sophisticated system, it basically tells people how to do everything and kind of like cheats in a way, and then he's the one just like, I'm better than AI, and I'm going to beat the AI, and he does. That's probably what's going to happen because it's a movie. Lilo and Stitch. Hey, it's a live-action remake of the Hawaiian roller coaster ride in this journey of an alien experiment landing on Earth to find its place in the universe. Spoiler alerts, they don't dress the one-eyed alien in a dress, so, you know, that's just the way it is. But he became essentially the family dog, isn't accepted, but through trial and trial becomes an important part of the dysfunctional family dynamic. Trust me, if you're at home, if your home is a dysfunctional household, having a kid or a pet isn't always the best solution, but somehow it works out in Hollywood films. Watch a live-action remake of a Disney movie, basically last foray into 2D animation as they kind of close the gap. Sister Midnight. This is a Bollywood film about a lady who ends up with the kind of like the last guy in town, just because, you know, it's all about arranged marriage and she's stuck with a guy she doesn't love, and she tries to make it work by doing her own thing and going on adventures throughout India. This one is one of those movies where they try to make a Wes Anderson type of film with characters and arranged marriages to boot. I watched the trailer and it seems like a lot of people are telling her how to live her life while she's trying to figure it out for herself, while also just kind of refutes social norms along the way. So this is supposed, from what I read about this is supposed to be a Bollywood feminist kind of movie to kind of like have women blaze their own trail. So blaze your own trail with this next one, A Blueprint for Murder from the new Dubbin Stuff from the 1953 movie. Man, I'm so dyslexic, but enjoy. Well, I'm having some trouble reading what's on this document. Do you mind if you help me? It's just that I can't read a doctor's handwriting. Sure thing. Just show me the page you'd like me to read. All right, well, it's on this next page right here in the light item that basically says that the Listerine. Listerine, that was my next guess, by the way. Seems like they got some plaque buildup going on there. Suppose the doctor prescribed some, you know, basic chemicals, something that's a routine kind of thing for their regimen to clean their teeth. And I think this one says avoid tobacco and coffee. Well, yeah, those are suggestions, but, you know, just as long as you brush your teeth after you smoke or you drink or whatever. You know, I feel like this should have been done between me and the doctor. Right. But I just don't know what to do with the shortages. The doctors are so busy. In fact, I'm like a paramedical person to help with the, you know, bad news. Oh, so you do some basic administrative work for the doctors and tell them what they need to read on here? I know what you're asking, but yes, my job is relevant. Ugh, well, you know, this job seems very difficult. Yeah, especially if you have to read the prescription. Sometimes I've prescribed the wrong thing to the wrong person and they got really mad. Well, their spouse got mad. They weren't alive. Excuse me.
Yes, I'm extremely busy.
I have some basic questions.
Well, let me grab the administrator for you. That'll be $5,000, by the way.
I'm on Blue Cross Plus. Does that mean anything?
No.
Excuse me, drugstore guy. Do you sell any over-the-counter drugs that are very similar to prescription drugs?
Let me look at this first. Yes, no. Oh, no, definitely not. Oh, that's terrible. No. Oh, geez, what am I going to tell him? Well, you got nothing from me, sir. Perhaps maybe go somewhere else.
Back to the hospital, I guess.
Patrice, you have a guest here. He's an officer, so be on high alert.
Oh, hello. Could you comp my parking?
No, I'm not with bills payable.
Well, they told me to talk to you. But I digress.
That'll cost extra.
I'm just trying to find somebody who has prescribed Listerine to my client.
Well, that's...
Yeah, it's over the counter. Why would anyone...
bad handwriting?
I'm sorry, that's not going to work this time.
Well, that does sound odd and everything, but I do remember something.
Did find it weird that the doctor was talking to a dentist, prescription drugs and everything.
Interesting.
Yeah, I never knew dentists to prescribe drugs to people. My belief is that they're trying to prescribe...
Toothpaste?
No, I said too much. I have to... Excuse me.
All right, let's go over some of the weekly things that happened in the news this week. As we jump right in, some breaking news this week. A jury found Yao Bin Bao guilty of 4 felony counts of sex trafficking and 1 felony count of labor trafficking. The charges stemmed from Bao's ownership of Soul Massage, an illicit commercial massage parlor in Missoula. The anonymous tip back in 2023 brought these issues brought into light, and through investigation through findings saw these activities occur between April and May of 2023, where they tried to solicit employees into certain things. So, yeah, and so that's just kind of just happened this week. It's a kind of a brief story as they talked about their investigation moving forward. And moving on to our next segment, just in time for Pride in Missoula, state law has limited use of pride flags being flown in some locations. So this isn't one of those kind of things where they're just being like, the House bill is going to, get rid of all the additional flags here and there. It's like they went through the effort of looking for flags that they want to be shown, because this isn't just about Pride. It started to show some of the cracks in the system as they implemented House Bill 819, which limited flags related to representation of political party, race, sexual orientation, gender, or political ideology. However, the exemption of the thin blue line that often refers to police and language on the bill does allow those flags, like the Gadsden flag, which is also known as the snake with the "Don't Tread on Me," and other official historic flags to be flown. Regardless, this is clear that the governor, Greg Gianforte of Montana, who flew the thin blue lines flag, made as much of a political statement as the pride flag that Bullock flew back in 2019. Flags of tribal nations, foreign countries, military services branch, and POW/mission in action flags and official school and government entities flags are also permitted under the law. So it's essentially just being like, yes, 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 no, no. So the one that made this bill, Representative Braxton Mitchell from Columbus Falls, seemed to have a very selective permission that reflects their free speech and restricts others. Kind of funny, we're going to realize the guy's from a town of 5,000 people. So far, our fair governor, Gianforte, decided to veto a bill related to governor transparency and access to public records within the governor's office. According to Montana Free Press, on May 16th, a letter striking down House Bill 271, which would have limited the governor's ability to raise an executive privilege argument in the records request denial. Gianforte referred to the Montana Constitution and a recent Montana Supreme Court ruling that narrowed Montana's right to examine public documents and observe the deliberations of public bodies. So, it's the open meetings law, which is part of our Constitution. Montana contains the right to public information based on our Constitution, which has strong support for releasing public records, Gianforte claims. And Gianforte claims, quote, while the right to know provision in Montana's Constitution contains the strongest, if not the strongest, right to public information in the Western world, when the framers adopted it, they also did so fully aware of the longstanding history of privilege within the United States. So governors should not have the privilege beyond what the people give them. So regardless of whether you agree with him and this administration denying the right to collect information for people to make well-informed decisions about their state, we risk denying access to public for the privileged few. The court wrote that individuals or organizations seeking public records can ask for a, quote, in-camera review of restricted materials. Under the process, a judge would review documents the state has gathered in response to a records request and decide which ones should be disclosed under the right to know. So HB 271 passed the legislature with 83 out of 150 lawmakers voted in favor, not enough to meet the veto override of a 2/3 vote. This sets the tone for anti-transparency that 50 years of governors have abided by up until now. So Bozeman made the Montana Free Press news this week, with the tenants unions winning a major victory in reducing evictions. So this is also, you know, if you really think about it, there was a legislature law that passed in the state of Montana that basically forces landlords and property managements to pay back application fees for rentals. And so this was to help curb predatory actions of landlords and property managers to do that. But this is also Bozeman, which is kind of revamping some of their affordable housing. But for those of you who don't know, Bozeman is one of those most expensive cities in Montana to live in, a college town with a bunch of renters spending upwards of $2,200 a month, as opposed to Missoula, which is roughly about $1,500 a month. Deputy Mayor Joey Morrison campaigned on affordable Mayor Joey Morrison campaigned on affordable housing issues and renters' rights in Bozeman 2023's mayoral election. Morrison was endorsed by the Bozeman Tenants Union and told those gathered at a recent commission meeting that providing attorneys for Bozeman renters has been a priority and focus of his since he took office. Some of those programs that started was Bozeman's affordable housing under the HUD, which was established soon after in 2023. And mind you, Missoula's had HUD since 1970s, and these are utilizing federal grants and organizations to help bolster affordable housing. Bozeman Tenants United has been working to establish what's known as a tenant right to counsel programs in the city for more than a year. This would provide legal advice and protections for tenants seeking housing in the community. And today we provided that the city's attorney's office showed 123 evictions in Bozeman last year alone. The same data also showed 32 tenants were able to file necessary legal paperwork to challenge those evictions in court, and only 4 were represented by professional legal counsel. Of course, you know, there's the Better Business Bureau where you can report any illicit practices by property managements in general, but this is something that a city can do on a more local level where they can actually work with folks. So they're looking to help raise some of the money to help bolster these costs and legal fees, about roughly $300,000 a year to help most vulnerable Bozeman renters, which described as families with young children, and then about $500,000 would be required to cover every tenant in the city. They are currently seeking federal grants to help pay for this program and fund this for the year. So this and state law targeting application fees for renters would allow a reimbursement to those who don't get those rentals. So application fees is a big thing with the state of Montana. So those are kind of like the blip notes of what's happening in and around. And of course, speaking of what's happening, measles have come back to Montana, and a recent Kalispell reported a case. Although 1,024 people in the U.S. have been diagnosed, one of those people have a 90% chance of spreading illnesses to others 4 days before and after rash-like symptoms occur. However, the vaccine reduces that, and many schools are ramping up efforts to get kids immunized. Health officials in Flathead County said that the individual had recently traveled out of state and was isolated at home. The department said that the person's vaccination status was unknown, but the investigation has confirmed that the adult was not in public settings while infectious. So for your related health news, you can go to the Department of Health and Human Services. And also, as we're talking about health, we also have to worry about Lyme disease because we have the black-legged ticks, which are much smaller and darker in color than most other ticks in Montana, have been found in many counties, including Dawson County and Sheridan County. So the state health gave tips on how to manage ticks as the weather opens for the window for their feedings, wear EPA registered insect repellent, treat clothes and gears with products containing 0.5% permethrin, check for ticks often and carry tick removal devices such as tweezers, shower soon after being outdoors, put clothes in the dryer for 10 minutes after being outdoors to kill the ticks that live in your clothes. Check pets regularly for ticks and talk to veterinarians about tick prevention products. So most of these ticks are known as deer ticks, and they tend to go on those things, but you always got to worry about some of those other diseases, not just Lyme disease, but there's Powassan virus, hard tick relapsing fever, and babesiosis, and examples of disease known to be translated through those bites. And as we go into the weekend, we have some events that are happening as well. Missoula Aging Services is doing an in-person caregiver support group this afternoon starting at 2 o'clock. This group meets for the fourth Wednesday of the month from 2 to 3 p.m. This is the caregiver support group at Missoula Aging Services offers a safe space for caregivers to share experiences, advice, and practical strategies for managing caregiver responsibilities, and all caregivers are welcome. They also have immunization clinics happening at Barnes School starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon, so you can get those measles shots and more. Then there's, you can do some stargazing, and there are astrophysics that are happening at the Payne Family Native American Center tonight at 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. They usually do this every week throughout the summer, so it's something worth doing if you're interested in going out and about. 10 Spoon Winery is hosting Brett Arneson, Ray Misner, and Damian Margot is going to be at 10 Spoon Winery playing some music. Free Cycles is also hosting an Eco City Missoula Mighty M community cooperation. It's part of the drive position. They're trying to drive positive change and build a sustainable, eco-friendly future through collaborative problem solving. And so this is an organization through Free Cycles at 6:30 p.m. tonight. Karaoke at Jack's Saloon at 7 p.m. VFW is also doing some bingo at 7 p.m. Darren Wade is playing at Karaoke Public House at 7:30 p.m. Raised by Wolves is going to be at the Old Post at 8 p.m. The Sardines Apocalyptic, like the lipstick and Apocalypse. Chuck Vibes is going to be at Monk's playing some music down there, and Cash for Junkers is going to be at Union Club, and Tanner Law's band is going to be at Sunrise Saloon tonight at 9:30 p.m. And as always, we have our farmers market starting at 8 a.m. to about 1 p.m. every Saturday going on through the summer and well into October, so you guys can enjoy some fresh produce and more. Big Sky Challenge, walk, roll, stroll, and family fun run at Fort Missoula. Lace up, roll out, and join the first ever Big Sky Challenge race. It's a 5K and family fun run on Saturday, May 24th at Fort Missoula. We also have outdoor family scavenger hunt at Holstein Glamping Cabins starting at 9 a.m. Mansfield Parking Lot is doing a Missoula Bike Polo Presents Big Thigh Country Shuffle. So it's bike polo. You bring your bike, do some poloing. A bike polo tournament. Spectate at Missoula's Bike Polo and participate at the University of Montana's Mansfield Parking Garage on Saturday and Sunday starting at 10 a.m. Story time at Missoula Public Library. They also do Tiny Tales at 10:30 a.m. on Fridays and 10:30 a.m. on Saturdays. We have a museum tour at the Missoula Art Museum every Saturday at 11 a.m. We also have Volunteer Day at the Rocky Mountain Gardens. So they're looking for volunteers to contain over 20 distinct growing areas, including water-wise, pollinator-friendly, native prairie, native forest, vegetable, medical herb, sensory rose, and ornamental garden beds, as well as fruit trees and berry orchard. This free community resource requires maintenance, and while they're looking for all ages are welcome to join this fun and hands-on volunteer action day. So livable climate, nationbuilder.com/RockyMT Gardens for more information. You can also go to MissoulaEvents.net for more information. And as always, every Saturday, MCAT does our Saturday drop-ins from 1 to 3 p.m. to help bolster kids' creativity using stop animation. We do that every Saturday. We also have bingo night at Odd Pitch at 6 p.m. on Saturday night with Travis Yost playing at 10 Spoon Winery at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Empower Voiced at Missoula Children's Theater at 7 p.m. Rock Show at Free Cycles at 7 p.m. Nashville 406 at the Jack Saloon at 7 p.m. Karaoke at Westside Lanes, as always, at 9 p.m. Ida Ranch Hands is playing at Union Club on Saturday at 9, and then DJ Chris Moon will be wrapping up your Saturday at 10 p.m. at the Badlander playing some DJ music. And as we're talking about some volunteering, Fort Missoula's Native Plant Garden is always looking for volunteers through July, every Sunday at 9 a.m. And then we have a lot of other things happening on Sunday as well. Let's see. Design a Zine, our small edition self-publishing works used by artists, writers, musicians, and poets to distribute creative media and information using simple one-page paper and a copy machine. Think of a collage, but folding magazine pages. So they're doing some kind of cool things with magazine pages at 2:30 p.m. at the Missoula Public Library, and that'll pretty much wrap up your Sunday with funny comedy, open mics at 8 p.m. at VFW, and karaoke at 8:30 p.m. at Sunrise Saloon. So without further ado, I want to thank you guys for joining me, and for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Scott Ramp. Have a good weekend.